Welcome to TheKillFile, your favorite true crime podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Spears. Each week, we will explore the dark corners of true crime, unsolved mysteries, and murder. Join me as we uncover secrets, investigate evidence, and dive into the chilling details of some of the most fascinating cases. Get ready for a journey into the dark unknown because, in TheKillFile, nothing stays buried forever. Hey guys, welcome to episode 52 of TheKillFile. I am so glad that you guys are here with me today for another case. Before we jump in, just a few quick reminders. This fall I'm going to roll out bonus content called Hidden Files, where you can pay just a few bucks a month and get some extra episodes from me as well as other perks. Just one of the categories of extra episodes will be something called Listener Files, where my listeners can email me either like a hometown murder that they remember from their childhood, maybe it's not well known, maybe something crazy that happened to you or someone in your family, maybe a time you almost got kidnapped as a child. Anything that you can think that might be worth sharing here on TheKillFile. It doesn't need to be a long story. I will try to put a few together on each case if I can get enough people to email in as our listener pool grows. This category may take a little time to get rolling, and that's all right. But if you do have a story that you think is worth sharing, email it to me at thekillfilepodcast@gmail.com with the subject Listener File. Also, if you're interested in supporting the podcast, please take a second to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen. It is the absolute best way to boost the podcast to where other people can find us, and it only takes a second. One thing I did want to note is that I've recently noticed that the audio output on Spotify, even though I host with them, isn't always the best. I've had to change a few settings on my own phone when I'm streaming it to a higher quality, then it sounds better. But one place, if you have it, that it always sounds amazing on is Amazon Music. I personally listen to all of my podcasts on here because their sound is HD. However, for some reason on their audio, every once in a while there's some pops and clicks, even though it's not on the audio itself. It's such a pain, you guys, to try to figure out which one messes with your audio when you do it. I'm telling you that when I edit it, it sounds great, it sounds rich, and then when I go to replay it on certain host sites, I just cannot figure out why it sounds tinny or far away, but just understand that I am not an expert. I am learning all of this on the fly. I'm doing my best and learning with YouTube videos and trying to figure out with other people like why it sounds the way it does on certain hosting platforms. So bear with me. I'm doing my best and hopefully it will just sound great to you soon. If nothing else, please share the podcast with a friend that you think may like to join us or share some of the posts on your social media. It all helps to get the word out. I know that you're probably sick of hearing me say it, but it takes a long time to build a podcast from the ground up. It's not like I was already famous or had a following or anything, so I need help from my listeners to grow and make this successful. I would love one day to get some help with the podcast and be able to put out more episodes each week and a lot more content, but until that day, here we are. Last reminder, don't forget to check out the website at thekillfile.com to submit a case that you might want me to cover, to find the merch site, which has some awesome true crime merch. There's new merch added all of the time, and you can check out how the TheKillFile got started if you're interested. Okay, that's it for business. Let's talk about today's case. Today we are going to get into part one of a two-part case as we talk about the death of a young woman named Aundria Bowman. After completing this case, it ended up being 17 pages of script, which is just way too long for one episode, so I had to break it down into two. I'm sorry to have back-to-back two-parters, but it is what it is. I would rather break up and have two shorter episodes than one that is just super long that you might have to break up while you're listening to anyways, and then we forget where we're at least if I break it up, I can give you some reminders as to what we were talking about when we jump back in. Trigger warnings for this case, and I will remind you again next time, are going to be murder, rape of a minor, sexual assault on a minor, and molestation. Here we go. Our story starts in the year of 1974 in New Orleans, Louisiana. A 16-year-old young girl named Kathy Turkanian had given birth on June 23rd to a baby girl that she named Alexis Miranda Badger. Kathy would go on to say that her daughter was absolutely beautiful, with gorgeous eyes and a bald head. Kathy would go on to say that it became increasingly overwhelming, realizing all of the various things that came along with raising a child and how hard they were going to be. She was just a teenager. This anxiety and fear mounted as Kathy's own mother started to pressure Kathy to give Alexis up for adoption. Kathy would say that her own mother would tell her that she didn't know what she was doing, and when it came to raising this baby, that the baby would be better off with another family. She would later on come out and say that she had given birth to her baby girl during a time where she had ran away from home, tired of the physical abuse her mother was putting her through. This is when Kathy was just 14 years old, and then it was about a year later that she would get pregnant. Kathy's mother led her to believe that Alexis would have an amazing family who could not only care for her, but would give her the sort of life that Kathy would never be able to. Now, I'm not judging here because I believe that giving up your child, knowing that it is the best thing for that child when you're unable to provide the type of life that the baby deserves, is one of the hardest, most selfless acts that a parent can do, and I absolutely cannot imagine the heartbreak that comes along with that. However, I am going to say that in the documentary that I watched about this story called Into the Fire on Netflix, along with various articles that have interviewed Kathy about this case, it seems like she was pressured so hard by her mother to give up the baby, and maybe Kathy was hesitant, and sadly, now she feels a ton of guilt and regret after what has happened. I feel like a mother who has her own daughter who is pressuring her daughter to give up her own granddaughter instead of offering to help raise the baby and guiding her on how to be a better mother is just so sad and heartbreaking. It's not like Kathy was trying to decide whether to give her daughter up from birth or not. Alexis was already in her home being raised by Kathy. Ultimately, the mounting pressure of motherhood and added pressure from her own mother, Kathy would give Alexis up for adoption, hoping to give her a better life. Kathy would say that if she couldn't be the mother that Alexis deserved or couldn't give her anything else in the world, that she wanted to give her a better life. She then put her daughter up for adoption in the Norfolk, Virginia system. Fun fact, that is where I was stationed on my ship in the Navy. Virginia Beach is a gorgeous area. I highly suggest you visit there if you ever get the chance. Now, Alexis was just 9 months old when Kathy would put her up for adoption. Kathy would then go on to say that she had thought about her daughter throughout her entire life, but unfortunately the adoption was closed, meaning that she would not have any contact with her daughter. Kathy went on to say in an interview that in her fantasies about her daughter, she had been given a great life. And she also said that she did not want to search for her daughter or intrude on her life in any way while she was young. She stated that she, quote, left it alone until she was about 15, end quote. Now, let's change directions and talk about the couple that young Alexis would be adopted by. This was a young couple named Brenda and Dennis Bowman. Brenda and Dennis were said to be high school sweethearts. They both attended high school in Muskegon, Michigan. Family of Brenda's would say that in high school she was quieter and somewhat soft-spoken. Although the couple had met in high school, they were not in the same year. In fact, when Brenda was graduating from high school, Dennis had already been in the Navy for about a year. According to an interview with Dennis, he asked Brenda that after boot camp, when he would come back for a visit, would she agree to be engaged to Dennis if he proposed. The couple was later married in the year of 1971 while Dennis was still in the Navy. Dennis and Brenda would end up living in San Diego for about 6 months while Dennis was stationed out in California. Dennis and Brenda would then end up in Norfolk when Dennis was stationed in Virginia. While they lived in Virginia, the young couple wanted to start a family, but they were struggling. In fact, Brenda would end up being told that the chances of her ever getting pregnant were slim to none. This is when the couple would apply to be adoptive parents. It would take quite some time to get the phone call that there was a baby in need of a home. Brenda would later talk about this call in an interview, seemingly very excited at the chance to have a baby. The Bowmans would then add Alexis, who they would rename Aundria Michelle Bowman, to their family. Dennis would later say, quote, she had always been daddy's girl, end quote. Everyone surrounding the family, including the cousin and his wife of Brenda's, would talk about how sweet Aundria was as a little girl. Oh, she had these big puffy cheeks under these big old, totally 70s glasses, and she was just absolutely adorable. After some time, the new Bowman family would end up moving back to Hamilton, Michigan. As of now, the population in Hamilton, Michigan is approximately 8,700 people, and back in the day, it was even less, meaning this was a small town to live in with a small town feel. The town had only a handful of places, including churches, one store, and a gas station. Both Brenda and Dennis were said to have been churchgoers and were both said to be Sunday school teachers. A few years later, the couple would have an unexpected surprise when Brenda would learn that she was in fact pregnant. The Bowmans' second daughter, Vanessa, was born. In the pictures of Aundria with her baby sister, Aundria is much older but was said to be just elated to have a baby sister. Aundria was said to be a fun and outgoing young lady with a good sense of humor, and people seemed to like her. Friends from high school would say that Aundria may have been a little bit of a people pleaser, but who isn't really? Dennis would later on say in an interview that despite his daughter being a good girl, when Aundria hit 12 or 13 years of age, quote, "It was like somebody just flipped a switch," end quote. Aundria was said to have started to run away from home and was now getting into some trouble at school. According to Dennis, Aundria had also started using drugs, started stealing things from stores, and started lying to her parents. Dennis would also recant a time where Aundria allegedly broke a window with her fist in anger at her mother Brenda. Then he stated the couple was taking her to counseling. Now, here is where I say, as a mother of a teenage boy, I understand that teenagers are a pain in the ass sometimes. They are moody and mean and angry at the world at times. Also, as someone who was once a teenager herself, I remember being angry and emotional and hormonal and just all over the place with feelings and problems. It's just a hard time in most people's lives, and there's a lot going on inside your own body and your brain. But let me tell you, as someone who has gone through some trauma in various forms as a young girl and while growing up, there are sometimes signs that something else might be going on. Things that sometimes are deemed as normal teenage things can also point to trauma that may be going on inside the home, and sometimes maybe there's a reason for someone acting out in such a shocking and abrupt way. Sometimes it just starts to spill out. Now, I never punched a window or got in any legal trouble, but I identify wholeheartedly with Aundria's rebellious streak, as I too hated my parents, experimented with drugs, and did other things I shouldn't have. I think there's a huge difference between normal teenage rebellion and, hey, we need to talk to this teenager because there might be something bigger going on. On March 11, 1989, Dennis Bowman called into the Hamilton police to report his 14-year-old daughter, Aundria, as missing. Dennis and Brenda would later recant in the documentary that the day that Aundria went missing was seemingly a normal day. It was said that Dennis had taken Aundria to school that day because there was something that she needed to attend, and when he later picked her back up, Brenda would say that Aundria was sort of withdrawn from the couple. She would then say that she had to work the second shift that evening at her job. She said the couple took the baby with them so that Aundria could focus on her homework, although I will say Brenda said it more snarky, like, we took the baby so that Aundria could focus on her homework and couldn't use the excuse of, oh, I was watching the baby. Dennis then said he got home from taking his wife to work. He went inside, stating the household was unlocked. He then said that he laid Vanessa on the couch and went upstairs to look for Aundria and was calling her name with no response. When he got upstairs, Dennis claims the door to their bedroom, which had a lock on it, was broken into. He said that the couple had some luggage that they had for trips or whatever, then he claimed that one of the bags was missing. The Bowmans also said that they had gotten some of their tax returns back and they believed that Aundria had stolen $100 from their room and that Aundria was gone along with her purple coat. Dennis then said that he called the police immediately and let them know that his 14-year-old daughter was missing. Within the first few days of her disappearance, Dennis would say that they looked everywhere for her, even while borrowing other people's vehicles so that she wouldn't be able to tell it was her parents. Tips would come into the authorities that people say they saw her at various places in surrounding areas. Even a friend of the family had reported seeing her with bleached blonde hair in the checkout aisle of a local grocery store. Some reports would say that she got into the adult film industry in another state after she had left, and some local people reported hearing that she had left that evening and went to a truck stop and got a ride with a truck driver to another state, although no one knew where. It was widely accepted that Aundria had ran away, and there were no leads, no tips that panned out, no trace whatsoever. Brenda would recall getting off work late and heading out to just look for Aundria, and she would say this was until Dennis told her that she had a baby at home and that she needed to take care of and told her she needed to stop. Brenda would say that the two parents were grieving the loss or vanishing of their daughter. Now we're going to jump ahead to 2010 when Kathy, who again was Aundria's biological mother, received a letter from social services asking for her to get in touch with them. Kathy was now a retired nurse from the Gloucester, Massachusetts area. Kathy would say in an interview with People magazine that she had actually thought that she was going to get to meet her daughter. She thought this was Aundria reaching out. Sadly, this would not be the case, as social services had let her know that her daughter, at the age of 14, had gone missing and had not been seen since. Kathy would say that she was absolutely shocked. And to top it off, social services would not disclose her daughter's name or the people who had ended up adopting her. This was now 35 years after she had last seen her daughter and now 21 years since she had gone missing. The main reason for social services reaching out was because there had been a Jane Doe's remains found in what was said to be a cornfield in Wisconsin, and this was back in 1999. And now they needed Kathy's DNA to match it against the remains found to see if this was indeed the body of her biological daughter. It was horrifically said that the Jane Doe had been found abused and sexually assaulted. It would take 3 years to get the DNA results back, and during this time is when Kathy and her partner Ed got to work sleuthing. Some of the articles and the documentary showed Ed, and he just seems like a sweet old man. I just loved him. He just seemed so supportive and loving of Kathy and really wanted to help her find her missing daughter or at least figure out what happened to her. Kathy and Ed immediately took to the internet to search for the missing women with Aundria's birthday. Ed would say it only took like 10 minutes to find a missing girl with Aundria's birthday, and in fact, was the very first one on the website from Michigan's missing people portion of the state police department website. They then began to search for Aundria online or any information about the adoptive parents, but unfortunately they couldn't come up with any details. This is when Kathy would create a Facebook page called Find Aundria Bowman. Kathy and Ed would reach out to the community, to anyone who knew Aundria, and asked for any information they could give. This is when people started reaching out to Kathy and Ed, and one of the people was in fact Brenda's cousin and his wife. She would be the one to tell Kathy that it was Brenda and Dennis Bowman who had in fact adopted her daughter. After 3 years, Kathy would finally find out that the Jane Doe that had been found was not Aundria. This gave Kathy more hope of finding her daughter. She would then say that a Detective Haverdink would call her and tell her that they were going to continue to pursue the case. Detective Chris Haverdink, turns out, was in the graduating year ahead of Aundria from high school and felt the sort of connection to the case and wanted to solve it. A cold case team was formed to try to solve this 20-year-old case. You gotta love people who solve, or at least try to solve, cold cases. I mean, the people are still missing or still dead, and what's worse is when the person responsible could still be out there or could have done the same thing to other people. I can imagine that cold cases are hard to solve, and the people who do this kind of work are actual heroes. Also, something I didn't mention, but it is going to come up later on, in the documentary, if you're interested in learning more, is that there's this armchair detective, a man named Carl, who did some online sleuthing, who kind of sort of boosted this case in a big way, and he was there supporting Kathy the entire time. He kind of connected the dots from that Jane Doe that was not Aundria, but it did bring the authorities kind of back to this case and helped bring it back to the light. Of course, this was along with Kathy and Ed. So for all the crap that people give others for being armchair detectives or people who are online sleuths, as long as they're not interfering with the investigation, which I do know unfortunately can happen, I say let them try. You never know what they're going to solve. There are such big networks of people who help out on cases and get shit done, and it's actually super impressive. I remember seeing on the documentary that Carl kind of put this spreadsheet together of missing people because there was nothing connecting all these different people, and then he would kind of go back and see if they found remains and match it up to birthdays or around the date of births or whatever, and let the local authorities know that they might test it for this person or that. It's actually awesome work and good for you. Anyways, the team contacted the Bowmans and let them know that they were going to be actively working the case again and interviewed them as well. Dennis would be quoted as saying, quote, "Let's get down to business. Let's find my daughter," end quote. Kathy would say while wanting to find her daughter as well that she had a feeling that something would come from the Find Aundria Bowman Facebook page if she kept on top of it and working at it. And this is when a woman named Meta McLeod would end up reaching out to Kathy, wanting to tell her about her own story, and this was on May 11th, 2013. Meta felt that her own story could actually be connected to Aundria somehow because in September of 1989, Meta was actually abducted from a gas station in the town of Holland, which I guess is right by Hamilton. When Meta was just 6 years old, she was abducted by a man who claimed to know her mother and wanted to show her some puppies. She would later say that she had thought the man was really nice at first. I think that she actually said that he stroked her hair behind her ear, And it wasn't until they finally pulled over that his demeanor changed towards her. The man took a rope, looped it around her neck, and drug her into the woods. He then stripped her naked, tied her sweatshirt around her face to keep her quiet, and started to unzip and undress himself. She said eventually the man and her could hear some dogs barking and people nearby, and this is when the man would flee, leaving Meta there alone. Sadly, she said he sexually assaulted her. Once the man fled, Meta was able to untie herself and ran to the side of the road completely naked. Someone who had seen her called 911, and she was taken to the police station that night so that she could describe the man to a sketch artist. Unfortunately, the authorities never caught the man, and Meta said since she was 6 years old, she wanted to find this pervert so it couldn't happen to anyone else. Meta would eventually discover that Aundria Bowman went missing not that far the same year that she had been abducted, and there were other connective details as well. As she was researching and trying to find out more details about Aundria, she would come across a nice family portrait of the Bowmans. This is when she realized Dennis Bowman looked exactly like the man who had abducted and assaulted her when she was 6 years old. When Meta reached out to Kathy, she was absolutely devastated to find out the man who Meta believed assaulted her was the adopted father of her daughter. After Kathy and Meta did some investigating together, they were able to find out that Dennis worked not far from where Meta had been abducted, and the church that he attended was right down the street. Also, turns out that he had a beat-up old red rusty truck that Meta had described being picked up in, and this matched the picture of a red truck that Dennis was known to have driven. I believe it was Brenda's cousin who also confirmed this. This was the first time that Kathy had wondered if Dennis could have something to do with Aundria's disappearance. And this is where we are going to stop for part 1 of the death of Aundria Bowman. So this gives us a little bit of an introduction into this case, into Kathy's life, Aundria's life, and her adoptive parents. It also drops the bomb that Dennis may be more than just an adoptive father. I can't imagine the pain that Kathy is going through learning these things about her own sweet baby girl that she had given up for adoption in hopes of giving her a better life. I do remember at some point in the documentary that Kathy said after giving up her daughter that she had fought suicide. It seemed like for quite a bit from having to give her daughter up, and then stated that she never had children after that and said that she wasn't that brave. I think, and this is my personal opinion, and you will get more of a look at this in the next episode, that Kathy is very brave. She is, as you will learn, determined to find out what happened to her daughter and never gives up until she gets the answers that she's looking for. It is truly a tale of one mother's perseverance into the life that was taken from her only child. Next week, we will take a closer look into the home life of Aundria, and we will find out exactly what happened to Aundria and who took her life. I hope that you guys will come on back next week for part 2 of this case next Monday here on The Kill File. Stay safe, you guys. Bye. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today. A few quick reminders before you go. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your platform. It will help The Kill File and other true crime lovers find us. Also, check out the website at thekillfile.com to suggest a case. Find our merch shop for fun Kill File gear, which you can also find at thekillfile.printify.me and help support the podcast. Have a suggestion or want to share your own true crime stories? Email thekillfilepodcast@gmail.com for a chance to get them read on the podcast. Follow The Kill File on your favorite social media platforms. We are on Facebook, Instagram, X, Blue X, TikTok, and of course, you can subscribe on YouTube as well. Find all of the links for the socials on the website. We are either listed as The Kill File or The Kill File Podcast. Come on back Mondays wherever you get your podcast fix when we will cover another case here on The Kill File, where nothing stays buried forever. Stay safe, you guys. Bye.